how not to be really super excited. He still gets excited, but I think he's toned that down a bit and become more analytical, and I love it. That's really my favorite part of a broadcast, of any of the broadcast teams out there, listening to Romo dissect the defense, tell you what he thinks is coming and why, and a lot of times he's right on the money.
And I also think what's happened is more and more people have recognized what he's doing. More people have talked about it. It's been a big thing on social media. But also, I think Troy Aikman has gotten even more dull and even more obvious. And it's made the contrast between him and Romo, two former Viking quarterbacks. And by the way, I covered Aikman. He's a very smart guy. He was a very smart quarterback. He just doesn't seem to put as much of his into it. He just seems to think that he can be John Madden, go, boom, that happened, and everybody will be happy. And it's just not good enough today. People have too much access to information. Fans are smarter. And so you need a smarter announcer. All right, let's get into some more Viking stuff. I do want to thank Mississippi Pub. It's 4455 66th Street East in Inver Grove Heights. We recommend it highly if you ever are going out to the Vikings Museum or to Viking Training Camp or to the Vikings building in Eagan for any reason. It's about a 10-minute drive. It's really easy to get over to Inver Grove Heights. We recommend GPSing. It's behind a copse of trees. It's right on the Mississippi. You're overlooking a marina and the river. Very pretty setting. And probably at its best in the spring and summer months. They do private parties, fish fries on Friday, ribs on Saturday, breakfast on Saturday and Sunday morning. Check out MississippiPub.com for everything they have to offer. All right, what other Viking news should we get to, Tim?
Well, we can run down some of their major free agents here. Defensively, obviously, to me, I think they're at best are going to have to make a choice between Sheldon Richardson and Anthony Barr. Barr, if they would want to franchise him, which I don't think would happen, that's going to be about a $15 million proposition. And there would have to be a lot of salary cap gymnastics that go into that. I think ultimately he's probably going to be in the $10 to $12 million range per year. If they're paying Eric Kendricks $10 million a year, I generally think outside linebackers are viewed and valued a little bit more than middle linebackers. And I think Barr's worth on the free agent market is going to be a little bit more than maybe some Vikings fans think he's worth. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone, despite I'm sure Mike Zimmer would love to have him back, but just given where they're at with the salary cap, I think that's going to be a tough one to do. And Sheldon Richardson, I think, was good, but probably not great. I'm not sure he lived up to the hype of what he was supposed to bring to this defense. So they may have to choose between the two. It's possible that neither of them are back next year.
That'd be really interesting. I thought Richardson played fairly well, but I just don't feel like he made a huge difference. How much better was he than whoever else, Tom Johnson. And I think Tom Johnson's a good enough player that the gap just wasn't large enough that you need to invest heavily in Richardson.
I agree. And I think ultimately, if they had their druthers, they would want to find another young guy in the draft to develop into that. I think Sheldon Richardson turned into what they thought they had with Sharif Floyd before the injury. And Floyd might have even been better than Richardson at this point, had he been healthy. And so I agree that I just didn't see a great gap between what Tom Johnson brought in 2017 and what Sheldon Richardson did in 2018. And Johnson, while he's a lot older and there is going to be drop off, and maybe already that's happened, he's certainly not going to cost you as much. And, the sad reality of it for Vikings fans is cost is going to factor in quite a bit to all the moves that they make in free agency, and they're going to be limited by their salary cap situation.
Right. Absolutely. Do you think Anthony Harris is the next starting safety next to Harrison Smith, or do you think they could look around a little bit?
Well, I mean, right now, the way things stand, they have Anderson Deo on the roster, but I fully would expect that either he takes a massive pay cut. He's scheduled to cost $5.5 million, and it's a team option, so I don't think they pick that up. I think Anthony Harris was the best safety that we've seen next to Harrison Smith in several years. I think he's just more versatile than Sendejo. Well, Sendejo will come down and be a big hitter in the box. He's not as long as Anthony Harris. He's not as fast as Anthony Harris. He doesn't take great angles and coverage. And I think Anthony Harris is, okay in the running game, but I think he offers more range and versatility. So, if I'm the Vikings and I can get Anthony Harris around $3 million a year, as opposed to Anderson Deo at 5.5, I definitely do that.
What do you see is our future for either George Iloka or Marcus Sherrills? Marcus Sherrills is one of the best stories going in the Vikings franchise and in Minnesota. Iloka, I thought, would be a really nice addition. He just didn't play much or play particularly well.
Right. And to me, it sounded like in talking to Iloka after the season had ended, I think there was frustration there where he didn't really understand why he didn't get more of a chance. Fact of the matter is he did get somewhat of a chance right after Sendejo was hurt, and I don't think he played that great, and I think Anthony Harris played better. So I would be surprised if Iloka is back. Sherrills, I mean, it seems like we talk about this every year that, here's a guy who's on the roster cusp, and I feel like with a new special teams coordinator coming in, this could be the year that we actually don't see Marcus Sherrills back. But it'll be interesting to see. I mean, how much do you value basically just a punt returner and just having a safe punt returner? 3 years ago, he was an explosive guy. I think he can still have some wiggle to him, and I think he's extremely good with his decisions, but I don't know if that's worth a roster spot when you're going to have to fill in a lot of this roster with low-end players that, aren't making a lot of money, because the roster is really changing where you have about 10 guys that are in the $8 million and above range. And when you have that many taking up that much room, that means you need a lot of guys that are in their rookie contracts and maybe low round picks that aren't making a ton of money filling in at certain positions. And that's where I think Marcus Sherrills could get caught up in the roster numbers.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some of the offensive free agents and potential free agents. Do want to thank Tony Hoaglund, your State Farm agent in Champlin, Hoaglund. You can follow him on Twitter at Insure Champlin, INSURE. Champlin is in Champlin, Minnesota. He handles my insurance. He handles Michael Russo's insurance on the network.
Hey, Minnesota sports fans. This is your local State Farm agent, Tony Hoaglund. I need you all to ask yourselves this question. If you're in an at-fault car accident and you are sued for $700,000, how much of that $700,000 will my current insurance company pay? If you are unsure or can't answer all $700,000, you need to give us a call. State Farm has been number one in car insurance since World War II and number one in homeowners insurance since 1964. For a no-obligation review of your current policies, call us at 763-421-4900 or check out our website at www.champlininsurance.com.
All right, do you see Latavius Murray coming back?
Only if he's willing to take a pretty big pay cut. I think he was around $5-6 million in 2018. And just looking around at what a lot of the backup type running backs make, maybe $2 million is about right for him. And I feel like Mike Boone showed something in limited opportunities. Rock Thomas showed things in preseason that were pretty exciting. Murray's got a great role with the team as a veteran, a guy that's been around. He's great at picking up blitzes and understanding things. But, eventually you may have to get away from paying a guy just to be sort of a mentor, especially if your salary cap is getting pushed to the ceiling. So I think Murray may find a better opportunity elsewhere. I would love to see him back, though, because he's a great guy, and I think he's I think he's valuable for a running back room that is still really young with Dalvin Cook, Mike Boone, Rock Thomas, and Amir Abdullah is another free agent. I doubt they bring him back either unless Kevin Stefanski sees something that they really like, feel like they can use him as a gadget guy. But as a full-time running back, I don't think Amir Abdullah is really that kind of guy.
No, I don't think so either. And, the other thing is we don't know how durable Dalvin Cook will be and how much workload he can handle. And Latavius Murray's kind of always there to handle situations and to do things like pass block and get tough yards. I think he's a good fit, but you just can't overinvest in your backup running back. You just can't. How about the offensive line? They have Easton, Compton, Brett Jones. Easton got hurt. Compton and Brett Jones did not help as much as they would have liked.
Yeah, I mean, Compton is going to have to be basically a veteran minimum guy. Let's face it, when they signed him, the anticipation was that Nick Easton would be fully recovered from his surgeries and not have this herniated disc that really screwed him up in training camp. So, the expectation was that Easton would be their starting left guard and Compton would just be a backup at both guard spots. And, unfortunately for the Vikings, they had to have Compton playing as a full-time left guard and starting there. So, if Easton is back healthy and they're confident that he will be, then I think they try to re-sign him and Compton comes back only if he's on a veteran minimum deal and really nothing guaranteed there because I would expect some pretty strong investment in the offensive line with the draft. And so, Brett Jones, I kind of view him like I do Compton. Basically, he's a backup and if you can get him on the cheap, great. If you can't, there are other guys that you can find to help in that role.
I thought Trevor Siemian had a good year. I don't know if he took a bad snap all year. Do we have a sense of what the Vikings think of him after a year where he just didn't get off the bench?
I really don't have a great sense of that. But here's the thing. I mean, they've looked at potentially signing a CFL quarterback. And I think that they feel like Kyle Sloter has, I feel like he could be in that position where for a team that, has Kirk Cousins, where he's going to be your starter, and Cousins has been, for all the other criticisms you can throw Cousins' way, he's been durable throughout most of his career, and especially last year with the Vikings when he took a lot of hits. So I don't think you invest a lot in your backup quarterback if you are the Vikings. If Simeon's going to, be a low-priced veteran, okay, but I don't see a great gap between what he offers and what Kyle Sloter offers. So if I'm the Vikings, I probably just say, okay, Sloter's our number 2 guy, and let's just see if we can develop somebody, whether it's a CFL quarterback, whether it's an undrafted rookie or a 6th or 7th round pick as your number 3 guy. So that's the way I would go if I'm them.
And do you think Dan Bailey's back as the kicker?
That one is going to be really interesting because it'll obviously depend on their special teams coordinator. I would re-sign him. I thought he had an okay year. It's down by his standards, and so therefore you would expect, okay, he could probably be able to rebound. And have, get back to being one of the better, more accurate kickers in the league. And I think if you brought back the same long snapper, which, Kevin McDermott's expected to be here, but then, if Matt Weil is back as your punter and holding, I think a full offseason with those 3 together would help Bailey some. I would bring him back if you can get him around the $2 to $3 million mark. I just think if you have a veteran kicker, it makes a big difference. There are a couple out there that like a Robbie Gould. I know people would love to have him, but if Gould isn't the guy, then I think Bailey is probably the next best guy for them.
You think Gould's going back to Chicago?
I would find it hard to believe that with the money that they would still owe Cody Parkey, that they would that they would bring in Gould. And mean, Gold's probably a $4 or $5 million a year
Right.
kicker, and you're also, I'm not sure what the figure is that they would still owe Parkey, but I think it's somewhere around 3, maybe 4 million that they would take if they would cut him. So now you have close to 10 million invested at the kicker position.